Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
All right, thanks for stopping by the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today we dive into this series on my book, 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation, How to Become Your Best Self. And I just want to mention to you, as you dive into this or you begin listening to this, don't think about it just for yourself. Think about it for yourself, absolutely. But also think about it, maybe you have a child or a relative or a friend or a coworker who maybe has been struggling to get results, struggling to just make ends meet in life, that sort of thing. So as you go through this content, think about who might need it, who might benefit. So don't just look at it from leading yourself well, but as you go through it, how can you influence someone else and take this content and help them transform themselves? And also, I want to tell you, you can actually read the first 5 chapters for free. Maybe you haven't bought the hard copy like I suggested, but I still highly suggest you get the entire paperback book. 90 pages, again, 30 chapters, 3 pages per chapter. But you can check out the first 5. You just go to bluecollarleadership.com/download, DOWNLOAD. And that should take you to a site, and you can look up, there should be 8 opportunities there for you to download or to read right there. You don't have to put your email in, but you can read about 5 chapters worth of 8 of my books right there. And one of them is this book. So if you want to just get a taste of what the book's like and what it feels like, and also a deep dive into these first 3 chapters I'm kind of going to cover today, I'm just going to pile them all together and kind of present it that way. So it's not going to be exactly like the book, but it's going to be the content that's covered in those 3 chapters. And just to give you some insight, this book, again, 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation. So in the book, there's 10 sections, obviously. So again, there's 30 chapters, so there's 3 chapters per section. The first 2 chapters of each section, I'm teaching you about that element, that layer of transformation. And then the 3rd chapter, I kind of share something related to that, how I applied that in my life, kind of a personal story. So there's 2 teaching chapters, a personal story. 2 teaching chapters, a personal story to support that. So that's what you'll find throughout the book. So today, we're basically, think about this as a 10-layered pyramid. We're talking about the bottom layer. And that layer, I call it, that foundational layer at the very bottom is thought. And I say thought is the foundation of choice. So that tells you what the second layer is going to be, but we're talking about that next week. But the second layer is going to be choice. Choice is the foundation of vision, but we'll talk about that next week. So you can start to see how these kind of stack up if you wanted to illustrate them and visualize it. So a 10-layered pyramid, thought is on the bottom. Thought's going to determine everything up above it as you begin to transform yourself in whatever area of life you want to focus on. So when I got the choice formula is what I call it. Thought plus emotion plus action equals choice. It starts with thought. And I want to share with you a quote here by James Allen. And James Allen says, "The outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought." Think about that. The outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought. So our environment, where we find ourselves in life, basically, it's a reflection. Our environment is a reflection of us. If we don't like our environment, guess what we have to do? We've got to change us, because we generated that environment. I know it may be a little deep to think about, but who we are determines what we get out of life. Like I can tell you, the person I used to be, I lived in a completely different environment before I started transforming myself. I hung around with different kind of people. I did different kind of things. Those things caused me to be in different kind of situations. But it all began with thought. But let's dive back. I'm saying these 10 foundational layers, building this pyramid of transformation, if you could visualize that. But what is the pyramid sitting on? When I wrote the book, I didn't make this a foundational layer, but this is the ultimate foundation. Like if you're going to build a real pyramid, you're going to build it on the planet Earth here. The ground, the soil, that's where you're going to start from. That's what's going to hold up the pyramid. The strength of that soil is going to determine how strong the pyramid is. So when you think about that, relative to the earth, the soil, the land, whatever you want to call it, where you would build this pyramid of personal transformation, if you're visualizing that, the equivalent of the land is our values. So what I'm saying is this transformational pyramid is going to be built upon our values. So our values, let me say it like this. Your future begins with your values, which fuel your thoughts, which produce your feelings, which influence your choices or your actions, which lead to your results, which determine your circumstances. So I pick those words very intentionally. So I'm saying your future begins with your values, which fuel your thoughts. They don't determine your thoughts. They don't necessarily influence your thoughts. They fuel your thoughts. They feed them. Your values feed your thoughts. And then those thoughts produce your feelings. Whatever you're thinking about produces your feelings. Just like right now, if I said think about the happiest moment in your life, and you really actually hit the pause button and think about it and come up, what is the happiest moment in your life? And you can generate feelings based off of that thought. But I could also do right the opposite, and I hate to do this to you because it actually make you feel bad because your thoughts produce your feelings. But if I say hit pause, think about the worst moment in your life. And if you really get to thinking about that, those thoughts are going to produce a completely different kind of feeling than thinking about the happiest moment in your life. And it's really that simple to influence people's thought and feelings. That comes into leadership, but we're talking about influence, so I don't want to get off into that. But what I'm saying is your thoughts produce your feelings or your emotions. They produce them. It happens. And then those feelings influence your choices or actions. Because I don't say they determine your choices and actions, those feelings, because you can have a certain feeling and then choose to go a different direction than the feeling makes you want to go. You might be feeling mad and you want to, get angry physically with someone, but you don't. That's because your feelings don't determine your choices, but they absolutely influence your choices or your actions. So then now I'm saying these choices or actions lead to your results. They take you to the results you're getting. The collective choices you've made, the collective actions you've taken are going to lead you to your results. And then see, these results absolutely determine your circumstances, because whichever results you're getting absolutely, again, determine your circumstances. So think about it. Your circumstances, whatever they are, And they're different in different areas of your life. If you think, what's my circumstances at home? What's the circumstances with the relationship with my children? Maybe individually. What's the relationship? What's the circumstances related to the relationship with my spouse or my coworker or my boss or someone who reports to me? What are my circumstances financially, emotionally, socially, physically? What's the condition? What's my circumstances related to my health? Circumstances related to my wealth, kind of thing. That's like the end results, your circumstances. Where did all that come from? All the way back to your values. So simply put, values lead to thoughts, lead to feelings, lead to choices, lead to results, lead to circumstances. If you want to change your circumstances, you got to go all the way back. Really, when we're talking about transformation, not really change, I used the wrong word. When you want to transform your circumstances so that it becomes permanent, not temporary, you got to go all the way down to values. Again, that's symbolic of the earth, the land, the ultimate foundation upon which you're going to build your transformation. You know, when it comes to teamwork, you think about the job or the culture of an organization. You can't change the culture of the team without changing the values of the team. And why is that? Is because the values of the team determine the behavior of the team. See, you can't make others change their values. I can't make you change your values. If I knew you and I knew you were in terrible circumstances, some area of your life, I can't make you change your values. I can do all I want to do. I can't make you change your values. If I have a lot of control or power over you in some kind of way, I might cause you to comply with my demand. That doesn't mean you changed your values. As soon as that outside force is not in the picture, you naturally gravitate back to your values. It's one reason there's a lot of issues with that in the military, because the military has, they kind of force leadership through the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If you don't comply and adopt our values, there's a price to pay. And that's why a lot of people in the military, they're not really good leaders, because they don't really value what they're living. They're living it because they're kind of forced to. It's part of the job, but it ain't part of who they are. Could be the same thing at work, where a leader with high values, high character, wants their team to act a certain way at work. But act is the key word. It ain't real. It's not authentic. And that creates a lot of conflict. But you can only attempt to influence others to choose to change their values. That's what I'm doing in this book. That's what I'm doing with this podcast, this series. And I don't know you, but I'm trying to influence you through my story and my teaching and other people's teaching and quotes that I'll share with you, to choose to change your values, because your values have got you to the exact place you are today in every area of your life. Stephen Covey, when he talks about culture, he says, every time you open your mouth, you create culture. You share your values. Who we are is who we attract. Who we are determines who we repel. If we're a leader of a team or organization, our values determine our thoughts, our feelings, our choices, our results, our circumstances. And everybody can see that. So we attract people with similar values, and we repel people with values that are not like ours. So think about, again, this foundational element. Thought is the foundation of choice. So when we act, our thoughts are translated to the world as choices. And who we are on the inside is revealed to those on the outside. So ultimately, what's most important to you determines what you think about. Let's go back to the choice formula, because thought is the foundation of choice. Again, thought plus emotion plus action equals choice. What we think determines how we feel, and how we feel determines what we do. And as soon as we do it, we've made a choice that people on the outside can see. So thought, let's break those three components down. Thought is something we are consciously aware of in our mind. No one knows what we're thinking until we do something or say something. If we're just sitting still, we can be thinking about all kind of stuff. Nobody knows. But emotion is something we subconsciously feel based on our thoughts. While we're thinking, we may not be saying anything. We might not be doing anything. We could be sitting still, not moving. But as we change our thoughts, our emotions change. We can go from mad to sad to happy, frustrated, irritated, all that based on what we choose to think about. I could tell you, think about the last thing that made you really, really angry. It probably doesn't take you long to go back there. And if it's fresh, you might get angry again thinking about it. That's the way it works. But you can also quit thinking about it and get back to this lesson, these thoughts, and forget about whatever you was angry about and think about it. But action means something we do based on our thoughts and emotions. And again, the world sees those as choices. Choices. James Allen says this. He says, our mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild, but whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. And if no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. I know those kind of a strange sounding quote, but it comes from an old book called As a Man Thinketh. And James Allen wrote that in the early 1900s. So that's why that language is a little weird. Basically what he's saying though is our mind literally is like a garden. You think about it. If you just plow up a field, if you don't plant something, something's going to grow there. If you intentionally plant something and you intentionally take care of it, you can produce exactly what you want to produce from that garden. But what he's saying is, make no mistake, if you're not intentionally developing your mind, it's going to produce thoughts. And that's where a lot of people get all tangled up in life. They're just going through the motions. They go to work, they go home. They go to work, they go home. They go goof off, they go on vacation, they go hang out. Round and round they go. They get in this routine, but they're not developing their mind. So I want to give you a lot of credit. If you're listening to this podcast, you're not one of those people. Those people are not listening. But maybe you can motivate and inspire people through this book or this podcast to start putting some good seeds in their garden so it can produce a better result, which will provide better circumstances for whoever it is you may be wanting to help. So our thoughts are powerful. Think about it. Think about this right here. One very powerful life and death choice is self-talk. You probably heard people talk about it, self-talk, things you say to yourself. Guess what that is? That's just a thought. Remember, thought plus emotion plus action equal choice. Self-talk is nothing other than a thought. You can decide what do you want to think about. But self-talk are thoughts you have about yourself and others. And self-talk is far more destructive than what other people are saying to you or about you. You know why that is? It's because you are always listening to yourself. You may not listen to everybody else, but you're listening to yourself. You listen to that self-talk. You're receiving those thoughts, and they lead to other thoughts, but you can change them. You can say whatever you want to say. You can think whatever you want to say. Don't go down the negative path. Don't go beat yourself up for what happened last week, last month, last year. Reflect on it, learn from it, go forward, but don't beat yourself up. And think about this. And some people, this is very close and very real at the moment. But I got to teach this lesson because it's related to this self-talk. But think about it. People take their lives every day. This is how powerful thought is, and emotion and action and choice that I'm telling you about in that formula. People take their lives every day because of their own self-talk. Not what others are saying. Sometimes they're not even talking to others at all. But their own thoughts have brought them to the point of feeling worthless, helpless, and most often hopeless. And they've convinced themselves there's no reason to continue living. They did it, not someone else. Anyone taking their own life, they caused it right there with their thoughts. They could change it, but they don't change it. They get in a downward spiral. Sometimes, again, they're not talking to anyone. So that's how powerful self-talk is. These people no longer have hope, and they've given up. I'm going to tell you this. When you don't have hope, when you don't have it, you must get it from others. You must connect with positive people, and be with them, and talk with them. You must borrow their belief in you. Probably a good chance you've been down before and you borrowed someone else's belief in you. They can, others will and can lift you up. If the people you're around don't lift you up, you're around the wrong people. The right people will always give you hope and lift you up. And I'm telling you, there are endless examples of self-talk, again, thought, being detrimental to our well-being. We get stressed out because of what we're telling ourselves. Sometimes we tell ourselves this story, this self-talk about what's going to happen, and it ain't never happened. It ain't never going to happen. Or we think it's going to happen, but it still doesn't happen, but we get stressed out about it. You can choose your thoughts and you can change your thoughts. And when you do, you begin to change your habits, your circumstances, and ultimately your life. And I'll share with you another quote here from James Allen. He says, "We imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance." And again, thoughts are based on values, and high impact values lead to high impact thoughts. Low impact values lead to low impact thoughts. Share a quote with you from Socrates. He says, "I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think." And what he's talking about is through influence, because you really can't make somebody think. But if I ask you a question, I just made you think, even if you didn't want to. If I say, "What's your car look like?" Visualize it. You probably just did. That's the power of influence. And it can be used for good or it can be used for bad. When we're talking about values, I've been reading a book called The Leadership Challenge. I'm still reading it at the moment. But I got some quotes in my quote file I want to share with you from the authors. And they say, just related to values. Values are guides. They supply you with a compass by which to navigate the course of your daily life. Another quote. You seldom consider or act on options that run counter to your value system. If you do, it's with a sense of compliance rather than commitment. And I'll share a couple more with you. Values inform the priorities you set and the decisions you make. Values tell you when to say yes and when to say no. Values also help you explain the choices you make and why you make them. One more. Values are your personal bottom line. They influence every aspect of your life. For example, moral judgments, commitments to personal and organizational goals, and the way you respond to others. And you can only be authentic when you lead yourself or others according to the principles that matter most to you. Principles, values, they're kind of the same thing. So those few quotes I just shared with you come from the book the leadership challenge. And I mine so many quotes and nuggets out of there for my quote file every time I'm reading that book, and getting a lot of good stuff out of it. V. Gilbert Beers, he had this to say about values. A person of integrity is one who has established a system of values against which all of life is judged. So when we talk about thought is the foundation of choice, as we transition into next week's episode, that's what I'm saying is thoughts lead to thousands and thousands, millions maybe, of choices. But relative to the transformation elements that I'm teaching you, I'm saying right here, one of those thoughts, remember there's thousands, but thought is the foundation of vision. Choice. Thought is the foundation of choice. So think about this. There's a story of a tourist who paused for a rest in a small town in the mountains. He went over to an old man sitting on a bench in front of the only store in town and inquired, "Friend, can you tell me something this town is noted for?" "Well," replied the old man, "I don't rightly know, except it's a starting point to the world. You can start here and go anywhere you want." And that's a great little story because, see, we're all at the starting point to the world. We can start where we are and go anywhere we want. When you think about values, here's just a little exercise, just a little mental lesson. Think about it. This is just one value relative to one thing. Do you value accepting responsibility or transferring responsibility? And this is where it gets complicated. Some areas of your life, you may take responsibility. Other areas of your life, in the very next second, you may transfer responsibility. But where you accept responsibility, where you value accepting responsibility, that's where you're going to get the best results and create the best circumstances for yourself. Wherever you transfer responsibility, you're putting someone else in charge of your destiny. So when you look through the window and blame others, you are transferring responsibility. Think about it. Every single time you blame somebody, you're transferring responsibility. Statements like, "You make me so mad," are made by those who choose to blame and transfer responsibility. When you look in the mirror to find a solution to your problems, you're accepting responsibility. Statements like, "How was this my fault? What could I have done differently?" are made by those who choose to reflect on and accept responsibility for their situation. So if you get the book, at the end of chapter 2, you'll see a little illustration. Basically, it's 3 circles that overlap, and where they all overlap in the center, I got the word high impact written in there. And so basically, and it's visually illustrated, but I can read it to you and explain, what it says. But basically, one of the circles is why we do it. Why we do what we do is about our purpose. Another circle is how we do it. How we do what we do is about our performance. And then the third circle is what we do. What we do will unleash our potential. So you got why we do it, how we do it, what we do. And those are about purpose, performance, and potential. Where those 3 things overlap, you're going to achieve a high impact. So I want to leave you with a quote right here from Bill George. He says, "The values that form the basis for your true north are derived from your beliefs and convictions. In defining your values, you must decide what is most important in your life. Is it maintaining your integrity, making a difference, helping other people, or devoting yourself to family? There is no one right set of values. Only you can decide the question of your values." Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.